I came here in 2019, just before the world shut its doors. At the time, I didn't know that this place, already closed, already abandoned, was about to become even harder to reach. COVID, then war, and suddenly a place that felt frozen in time became even more distant. This is Chernobyl, and more specifically, Pripyat. Not a disaster film, not a horror story, just a place, and one of the most affecting places that I've ever been. The exclusion zone is massive, 30 kilometres in every direction. Once you're past the checkpoint, it's quiet in a way that feels deliberate. No traffic hum, no planes overhead, just wind through the trees that were never meant to grow this tall here. People expect it to feel dangerous, but mostly it feels calm. Unsettling, maybe, but calm. Nature didn't panic. Nature just moved in. In April 1986, reactor number 4 exploded. A design flaw, a rushed test, human error stacked on top of a system that didn't allow mistakes to be questioned. It wasn't evil, it wasn't sabotage, it was people working inside a structure that valued output over hesitation. And I think we can all relate to that today. And when it went wrong on a scale that nobody had a word for yet. Pripyat wasn't evacuated for over a day. Kids played outside, weddings went ahead, then buses came, and everyone was told they'd be back in a few days. They never were. Pripyat was a model Soviet city, built for workers, young families, engineers, teachers. The average age was 26. Walking in, it doesn't feel ruined, it feels paused. Apartments still have curtains, posters still cling to walls. You get the sense that life didn't end here. It just stepped out for a minute, and then they never got the chance to step back in. This is Pripyat Cinema, the Energetique. It used to be one of the city's main social spots. Families, kids, workers coming to watch films or spend an evening out. Now it's abandoned and decaying. The projector screen is ripped to bits. Although you can see the seats are still laid out in formation, and posters do still cling to the walls, but in tatters. Walking through, it's hard not to think about the contrast. A place built for fun and community, now left completely frozen in time, as if the audience just got up and never came back. This is the swimming pool in Pripyat, Azure. It's one of the few buildings that actually stayed in use after the accident. Liquidators used it for years while clean-up work was going on because the water helped wash radiation off before they went home. Before all that, it was just a normal public pool. Kids learned to swim here. There were diving boards, changing rooms, spectator seating. Now it's empty. And the roof's partly gone, and trees are starting to grow through it, but you can clearly see what it was meant to be. This is one of those places that really shows the contrast, how normal life carried on here right up until it didn't. Going inside the buildings is what really hits you. Classrooms still have books and posters. Some of the rooms look like people just walked out and never came back. Shoes on the floor, desks lined up. It stops feeling like a site and starts feeling like somewhere people actually lived. That's the part that stayed with me the most. This room is one of the most well-known spots in Pripyat, the one filled with gas masks. They're children's gas masks, stored here as part of civil defence. Every school had them. They weren't left out as a warning or a display. They were just kept in storage like any other equipment. After the evacuation, the rubber broke down over time, and people moving through the building pulled the masks out looking for filters. That's why they're all over the floor now. What gets you is the scale of it. One or two would be unsettling, but a whole room full makes it clear how many kids were meant to use them. It's not staged, it's just what's left behind. Like most of the city, the school was built in the 1970s and early 80s, so it was still relatively new when it was abandoned. Everything here was set up for normal daily life. Classrooms, gyms, workshops, civil defence rooms. Schools like this were designed to be practical. Along with normal lessons, kids were taught basic emergency procedures, which is why you would see the gas masks and first aid equipment stored on site. When the evacuation happened, people were told they'd only be away for a short time, so nothing was properly cleared out. Books, furniture, teaching materials, it was all left where it was. Over time, weather decay and visitors have taken their toll, but what you're seeing is still the layout of the working Soviet-era school, just frozen mid-use. This is probably the most recognisable part of Pripyat. The amusement park was meant to open shortly after the accident, around May Day, which was a big public holiday. Everything was already built and in place, but it never officially opened, so none of the rides were ever actually used. Seeing it in person, it's less about being creepy and more about what it represents. This was meant to be a normal part of the city, somewhere for families, kids, weekends. It wasn't abandoned halfway through construction. It was finished. It was ready to go. That's what makes it a bit harder. All the planning was done, the future was already laid out, and then it was just cancelled overnight. No slow decline, no warning. One day it mattered, the next day it didn't. It sums up Pripyat quite well. A modern city that didn't fall apart over time, it just switched off. This building was one of the few places in the Soviet Union that worked like a supermarket. Most people shopped at smaller local stores, often needing different shops for different goods. This was more modern, larger floor space, wider aisles, and a range of products under one roof, especially by Soviet standards. For Pripyat, that made sense. It was a newer city, built to higher standard than most, and meant to show what a modern Soviet town could be like. There's nothing left inside now, but standing here, you can still get a sense of how forward-looking the place was at the time. It wasn't a struggling city. It was meant to be comfortable. This mural shows Yuri Gagarin, the first human being ever in space. Images like this were common in Soviet cities and symbolised progress and the future. It's held up surprisingly well compared to the buildings around it. This building looks a bit like a school, but it's actually a kindergarten. It was for younger kids, which is why you see small beds instead of desks. Children would nap here during the day while their parents were at work. Like everything else in Pripyat, it was left as it was when the evacuation happened. The bed, toys and rooms are still laid out the way they were meant to be used. Walking through the kindergarten, you can really picture how it used to be. This wasn't just a building with small beds, it was proper day-to-day space for kids. There were classrooms for lessons, play areas with toys, a kitchen, and of course, these sleeping areas where children would nap during the day while their parents were at work. The children here were mostly very young, toddlers up to around 6 years old. Every day would have been structured. Play, meals, naps and learning activities. You can still see traces of that routine. The way the beds are arranged, little cubbies for shoes and coats, and even markings on the wall from learning games. When the evacuation happened, families were told it would only be for a few days, but in reality they never returned. Children were quickly moved on to other towns or temporary shelters. Some were monitored for radiation exposure in the weeks after. But for most, it was simply a sudden end to their daily lives. One day they were playing and napping here. The next, the building was abandoned. Walking through it now, the toys, the beds, and the small chairs all feel frozen. You can almost imagine children running around giggling, taking their afternoon nap, completely unaware of what was happening just a few kilometres away at the plant. It's a strange mix of innocence and emptiness, a building designed for care and learning, left behind as if everyone just stepped out for a minute and had never returned. This is one of the car garages in Pripyat. Inside, it's full of abandoned vehicles, cars rusting away, engines exposed, paint peeling. There's even an upturned bus, just left where it was when the city was emptied. It's striking because it gives you a real sense of how abruptly life stopped here. These weren't old vehicles set aside for scrap. They were in everyday use when people left. Over the years, nature's slowly been reclaiming everything. Rust spreads across metal, weeds grow through the concrete floor, and trees start pushing their way into spaces where vehicles used to be parked. Walking through it, you can almost picture people coming in to fix their cars or park for the night, and then imagine them never coming back. It's a quiet, heavy reminder of what happened here, without needing any words. I'm glad I got the chance to visit when I did. Not because of the disaster itself, but because it's a place that shows what happens when people leave all at once. You don't really get that anywhere else. It's also a record of a specific time. Soviet-era planning, buildings, daily life, all just left as it was. We also visited the reactor site. It's not dramatic when you're standing there, it's just large and it's quiet. The new structure over Reactor 4 was already in place when I visited. It's there to contain what's left and to make sure nothing like this happens again. Standing here, it feels serious rather than emotional. I don't know when tourism there will properly return or what condition it will be like when it does, but this is what it looked like in 2019. Thanks for watching and for taking the time to look at it properly rather than just as a headline.